Good afternoon. I'm calling to order the Oklahoma City Board of Adjustment meeting for April the 7th, 2016. Our first order of business is to receive the minutes of the March 17, 2016 meeting.
So moved.
Have a motion and a second. Register your vote. The minutes are received. Next order of business is continuous requests or withdrawals from staff.
We have one continuance, item number 9. Case number 14198 is requesting deferral to April 21st. We also have a withdrawal, item number 10, 14162 is asking for it to be withdrawn.
I would entertain a separate motion and action for each of those items.
I have a question about item number 9. Was there some reason given for the request for another continuance?
I didn't get a reason on it. I don't know what the
Meeting with neighbors.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to continue case number 14198 to April the 21st.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Register your vote. The case is continued.
I'll make a motion to withdraw case number 14162.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. That case is withdrawn. Are there any requests for continuance or withdrawals from the public? Hearing none, call for the first case.
Case number 14191, request of Thomas Hernandez for a variance to permit residents encroaching the side building setbacks in the R1 Single Family Residential District located at 1006 South Barnes Avenue.
Is the applicant here or anybody to speak on this case today? Board members, at your discretion, we can choose to act on this or we can move it to the last item on the agenda and see if the applicant is just running late.
Yep.
Could I have a motion and a second then?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second to defer to the end of the agenda. Register your vote. They are moved to the end of the agenda.
Item number 2, case number 14201, request of Jesus Rezo for a variance to the 25-foot building setback in the R1 district located at 1505 Southeast 47th Terrace.
Is the applicant present? Come here to the podium and give us your name and address for the record and tell us about your requests.
My name is Jesus Razo. I live at 1505 Southeast 47th Terrace. And
Sir, do you mind pulling the microphone just a little closer to your mouth?
okay.
Thank you.
Good. I really don't know what to say. It's my first time doing this. I just told that I built my house over into the city. I needed 25 feet, and I think I was at 24 feet.
So the home was built, and it was after the home was built that you found out that the encroachment had occurred? Okay.
Did you build the house yourself?
Yes, sir.
I don't have a problem with this. We see these with some regularity on these curved, either cul-de-sacs or partial cul-de-sacs like this. I think it would be really difficult to find a way to site a house on a piece of property like this where you're keeping in line with the fronts of the houses near you, but yet you're having to comply with an irregular or curved front yard building line. So I believe that this probably meets our requirements, both for hardship and also for peculiarity, and I'll move approval.
I second it.
We have a motion and a second to approve the application. Register your vote. You are approved.
Thanks, sir.
Good luck.
Item number 4, case number 14203, request of MA Architecture for a variance to the number of parking spaces, hard surface parking, and sidewalk requirement in the AA Agricultural District located at 7916 South County Line Road.
Could I interrupt you real quick? Let's go back to case number 3.
Skipped over 3.
Case 14202 should be our next case.
Apologize. Case number 3, case number 14202, request of Chicken Express for a variance to the required site-proof screening fence between C3 Community Commercial and AA Agricultural Zoning located at 12,900 Northwest 10th.
Is the applicant present, or please come to the podium and give us your name and address for the record and speak to your application.
Tony Tuthill, 1002 South 8th, Chickasha, Oklahoma.
Let's go ahead and speak to your request.
When we originally replatted this and rezoned it, we wasn't aware that we could have overzoned the property to have not had to have done this screen fence, similar to what Aldi's has done and the convenience store there has done. This is all farm, nothing, no residence anywhere close to it. We're being told, and now with the new addition of the new academy and all that down the road, that all this property is going to be developing more commercial rather than anything residential. We were also required by the building department to put in a whole row of screen hedges all the way around this property as well, which we have installed. The fence we didn't install. The property owner, once we got about to the point where the restaurant was ready to open, asked me to come down and do a variance on it to see if we could waive the screen fence, given the situation of this piece of property.
So the plantings, the landscape plantings have occurred. What
Yes,
you
sir.
are requesting is a variance from the requirement on the screen fence.
Yes, sir.
And you said it's your understanding that the gas station to your west was granted a variance for the screen-in?
No, what they done whenever they zoned that property, and if you see that one outer boundary there, they overzoned about 20 feet all around their piece of property, which allowed them to actually, when they carved out their actual chunk that they were building on, left 20 foot of C3 between them and the farmer's field, is why they didn't have to do it.
I have a question. You have agreed that in the odd event that residential development does occur, that you would be willing to construct the fence, is that correct?
Absolutely, yes.
And I wouldn't have any problem supporting this with the condition that in the event there is residential development, you would so construct. So that's kind of what I think we could do. I don't know.
We would definitely put the fence up if that came up, because we don't want neighbors with the headlights shining in their yards, and, we expect them to come over and buy food.
Can we do that where he agrees to build the fence in the future? Is that enforceable?
Yes. If the adjacent property does subsequently develop residentially, that he would be required to put the fence in.
But to be clear, the ordinance requires the fencing between C3 and agricultural land currently. So, while it seems to me that the applicant is making an argument that perhaps the ordinance doesn't make any sense at all, I don't see anything peculiar about this particular situation. If the ordinance requires fencing between C3 and agriculture, why not here as opposed to anywhere else? I mean, if we only wanted it between C3 and R1, then I suppose that's what the ordinance would say.
I think the idea would be that in many cases you'll have agricultural zoning that is 5-acre home sites. And here, in this case, you don't have anything at all around it but vacant agricultural zoning. And he's willing to screen if it does subsequently develop. In fact, you could say if the adjacent property is developed with a residential use, then it would capture agricultural, residential, as well as R1 single family.
I would be more comfortable with that.
No one has signed up. Is there anybody else present that wishes to speak on this matter?
I'll make a motion to approve the application on the condition that if the adjacent property is zoned for residential use, that the site-proof fencing would then be required.
I second it.
We have a motion and a second. You are approved.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
John, before you call the next case, did Mr. Hernandez come in? The first case, I saw somebody come in late, and I just wanted to make sure if it was okay. All right. Please proceed, John.
Okay, now we can go to item 4. Case number 14203, request of MA Architecture for a variance to the number of parking spaces, hard surface parking, and sidewalk requirement in the AA agricultural districts located at 7916 South County Line Road.
Is the applicant present or the representative? Come to the podium and we'll entertain one speaker at a time. If we've got more than one speaker, we'll hear you separately. Just your name and address for the record and speak to your application.
I'm Heath Tate with MA Plus Architecture, and here on behalf of Mustang Public Schools. I'm also here with Justin Mitchell with MA Plus Architecture and Colin Meeks with Mustang Public Schools.
Go ahead and talk to us about your application today.
Sure. So currently on the site, there's an existing livestock barn that the students in the FFA basically are using to house livestock and then care for them, feed them, and they need basically more barn space is what it's come down to. They don't use these for show barns, they just use them strictly for maintaining and caring for the animals. So what we're asking for is that the paving requirements for both the on-street and off-street parking be waived, and we're also asking for the sidewalk requirements. If you've seen the site, it sits right across the county line and separation between Mustang City District, or city limits, and Oklahoma City. And there's no development in this area. There are some houses to the south, but they also do not have sidewalks. So if we were to put in a sidewalk along the street, it would be the only sidewalk on this stretch of road for miles. And there's also a ditch there, a drainage ditch, that could cause problems. The sidewalk would have to be moved fairly far back. And then the parking lot itself, rather than being all paved, what we're asking is that the hard surface be limited to just the handicap parking spot and also the entrance drives, and that the rest be allowed to be gravel for basically your on-site parking. And the driving factor behind this really is that this is the last project on a slate of projects for Mustang Public Schools. They need this. They just don't have the additional funding to put forth for the hard paved surfaces.
Thank you. Board members?
Is this similar? Could we condition the hard surface paving variance to the fact that it's zoned AA, and if it's rezoned? Because the zoning is going to, the variance is going to stick with it. So, but then later on, because it affronts this, north-south corridor, it would be there forever, even if it's rezoned to something separate, correct?
I wouldn't condition it to the zoning. I would condition it on the continued use of the property for VOAG barn.
Okay, that we could do that. Okay.
Also about the idea of limiting the hard surface paving to the handicap space. I mean, that's a good thing that it's that the handicap space is hard surfaced, but once those folks exit their car, they're going to have to go somewhere on this site, and if they're going over gravel, that's not going to be conducive. So if I couldn't make heads or tails out of my site plan, but if there are walkways that need to be paved, that seems to me to make a lot more sense. I'm not in favor of waiving the sidewalk requirement at all. I don't have a sense for whether they need as much parking as they would normally be required to have or not. I mean, I just don't have a sense of that given the use.
Just to answer your question about the need for a sidewalk, so the location of the handicap parking space and the 5-foot clearance on the side of it takes you right up to the door, essentially, that enters the facility.
So they should be able to make full use of the facility.
Correct.
What do we think about the idea of the parking being graveled? I'm not crazy about that.
I think the use here, how long has it been used in this capacity?
Since the 70s. So,
okay.
Yeah.
And obviously the district is reinvesting in the use of this facility for they're not changing the use, it's the same purpose.
Exactly.
My thing is that, I'm nervous about giving a variance for the hard surface paving requirement without some condition, because I don't want eventually there to be a variance on something that somebody comes in and gets something, rezoned, and now they have that variance. But this is the use. I mean, it's an agricultural use. What types of activities take place in the facility?
Basically just taking care of animals, washing them down. Stock trailers will pull into the site, load animals up, and then take them to show.
Yeah.
It's not a location where shows or where the public is invited in. It is simply a place to house.
And that's what I was trying to get to. It's not really a public facility. It's sort of quasi-public in nature, and I'm not sure that there's a lot of merit given what the ordinance is trying to accomplish for upholding a hard surface paving requirement when you've got a use like this, where they're not even really inviting the public. And I'm assuming that the handicap space is a byproduct of the permit requirement, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So, I mean, I don't have an issue with I want to go back to the sidewalk thing. I don't have an issue with the hard surface paving requirement or the number of parking spaces, because it's not like they're hosting public where the number of parking spaces is important.
Right.
I'm curious on the sidewalk thing. Tell me about the drainage ditch a little bit that's in front of this property, because I didn't drive the site. I just looked at it on the aerial. So,
I mean, it's basically just an open drainage ditch, culvert under the roadways that cross it, either to the housing or to this site. It's a fairly large ditch. I mean, it's about 3.5 feet deep, probably 6-7 feet wide, maybe even 8 feet. But that's about the size of it. And it's, like I said, it's kind of like you see out in the country anywhere. It's overgrown with weeds and just natural drainage.
I'm going to share Janice's concerns over a variance request on the sidewalk requirement, and even if there is an existing swale, that to me is not a justification for waiving it. The thing we run into is it may be a sidewalk that's out there by itself, but at the same time, if we continue to grant variances for the sidewalk requirement, you end up with such a patchwork of sidewalks that you diminish the intent, which was to create a pedestrian-friendly. And you do have residential neighborhoods adjacent to this. The other thing that we've come to realize is that none of us knows 5, 10, 15 years how the use of these different parts of the city are going to change. And so I'm not going to be able to support. I'll concur with Scott on the hard surface, your variance requests on that. The parking spaces to me is not the big issue, but on the sidewalk requirement, I can't support your request.
Is it possible to have it conditional as far as future development of the site, where any further development of the site, we have to put in a sidewalk? Right now, I mean, it just won't be used. There is no use for a walking space.
But that's not the intent of the ordinance.
Sure.
And so when we make these decisions on an island, like one thing that I'm really bothered by in this instance, we've had similar instances, not that those indicate what we'll do in this instance, where there have been safety concerns over a drainage culvert and creating those types of problems, where we've kind of looked at that as an issue for not granting the variance. In this instance, though, one of the things that concerns me is, even though it's preliminary, the infrastructure in this area is about to increase dramatically as that turnpike comes in, and that reflects on Jeff's comments. We don't know what's going to happen, but one thing I can tell you, as close as you are to Highway 152, is that over the period of the next 20 years, you're going to see new development around your horse facility there. And that's not something, since we don't know,
Sure.
Granting that sidewalk is a very explicit directive from City Council that this is what they wanted to see, and that's why it's hard for us to ignore that. The patchwork argument is what's made every time, and it just doesn't work. And the infrastructure over here is what I think really scares me the most. So I think it's pretty clear that there's no votes here for the sidewalk variance.
Okay.
I had one other question, though, since they were talking about lack of funding to do the sidewalk. Is there any way there could be a temporary variance on the sidewalk for 6 months or a year or something? Is that a wild court request, or give them a year or just something like that, but not that we would approve the variance for the waiver of the sidewalk?
I'm just concerned about when we give those variances, I mean, the City of Oklahoma City staff is overworked and underpaid, and if we give and we say this is going to happen in the future, things just happen to slip through the cracks, and I'm not casting any stones, because I think these people do a great job. But I just think that that's a risk. And it's easier for us to deal with it now than it is 3 years from now.
And I support the other comments of the fellow commissioners.
I would entertain a motion.
Can I go one more time back to the issue of the parking? And so my question really is to staff. The requirements that they're seeking variance from, do they not contemplate this kind of use? I mean, are they required to have more parking than they really need here, given the use?
Well, I think you're asking about the number of spaces.
The number of spaces,
The number of
yes,
spaces.
yeah.
The reason we put the variance of the number of spaces in is just because they'll have adequate parking, but they won't be parking spaces. They won't have any parking spaces at all.
Because they won't be.
Because it will be on gravel.
Okay, I see.
So
I see.
there'll be adequate area for
It's not a
parking.
question of whether they have enough room for people to park.
Correct.
Okay.
It's just that there won't be any true spaces.
Okay, thank you.
JJ, I'll take a shot at crafting a motion here, but what was staff's recommendation on the hard surface in terms of, you said not to condition it upon the rezoning, but
Condition it upon the site continuing to be used for this use, this agricultural, whatever is VOAG barn use.
for VOAG uses.
Yeah, so if the use
That would be-
changes, then
Are you good with that? Okay. So I'll make a motion to approve the application as to a variance to the number of parking spaces and the hard surface paving requirement, so long as this property continues to be used for VOAG-related uses. How's that? Okay.
Do we need to address our position on the sidewalk, or separate motion? Okay. We have a motion and a second. Register your vote. That portion of your request is approved.
I'll make a motion that we deny the applicant on the request for the variance to the sidewalk requirement.
Have a motion and a second to deny that portion of the application.
And I apologize, there was one other thing I forgot to mention that you may want to review and discuss as well. There was also a variance requested for the landscape requirement for this site.
we eliminated, there is no landscape requirement.
Okay.
Good
Good news.
I like that.
I'd leave that one alone. Don't let them look too much longer.
Forget I mentioned it, please. Thank you very much.
Good luck. Okay.
Item number 5, case number 14204, request of Edgar Morales for a variance to the minimum 5-acre lot size in the AA Agricultural District located at 15200 Southwest 59th Street.
Is the applicant here? Give us your name and address for the record, please, and then speak to your request.
My name is Edgar Morales. My address is 15200 Southwest 59th Street, Yukon, Oklahoma.
You bought a building and a parcel of land.
Yeah, about it was supposed to be kind of like 1 acre lot. And I guess there was a house there already, and I demolished the house to build a new house. And now I can't build a house there.
Only to find out there's a 5 minimum
Yeah, because
acre
of the
requirement.
zoning department.
If it makes you feel any better, if you had not demolished the house, but had simply wanted to get a permit to improve or expand it, you'd be in exactly the same position you're in now. I don't know. That's pretty cold comfort, I guess. But I think this is a fairly unique situation, and generally speaking, since residential uses are kind of the least impactful.
Are there any
uses in the
objections
world.
from any of the neighboring property owners? Is there anybody present that wishes
Well, I
to
think
speak?
everybody loves me around there. You know, so.
Nobody signed up to be heard? I'm going to move for approval.
I second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the application. Good luck on your new home.
Thank you, sir.
Item number 6, case number 14205, for a variance to the front, rear yard setback, 12-foot setback for gasoline pumps, number of parking spaces, using the street right-of-way for vehicle maneuvering in the C3 Community Commercial District located at 4836 South Pennsylvania Avenue.
Is the applicant present or his representative? Go ahead and pull that microphone down where we can hear you and give us your name and address for the record and tell us about your application.
Sure. My name is Gene Lavastida with Prime Architects. I'm representing the owner.
This looks like an upgrade for this particular piece of property.
It is quite a bit.
Go ahead and just, speak to your application.
Okay. So the property as it sits now is, I don't know if we have an existing image of it. It's fairly elongated in the north and south orientation of the property. Because of the setbacks and the easement and the setbacks, there's very minimal usable property to build or add on to the property itself. What the property owner would like to do is kind of expand it out towards the main street there to give more visibility to his business and just make the overall vehicular traffic in and out of that facility better. So that's
The part of this application, I guess, that I'm puzzled about, and I don't see any reference to it in the photos of the proposed development on site, is the 12-foot setback for gasoline pumps. Can you tell me about that?
The ordinance allows gasoline pumps and islands and canopies to have a lesser setback than the building setback. It allows a 12-foot setback, because generally they're out in front of
Right.
in the parking area.
But he can't even meet those? He can't even meet the 12, is what you're saying?
No. He's about half of that. What really hurt this property was when we took the additional 17 feet of street right-of-way. That coupled with the building setbacks on the front and south left it almost undevelopable.
I can
Yeah.
see that by driving it. Oh, are the pumps staying where they are, or will you move them?
there's the pump, the existing pump, there's two of them there currently, I believe.
Right.
One's going away. The second one, it's actually closer, I believe, to the street. So we're proposing to move it further back. The distance, the 12-inch distance, the reason we're asking for the variance on the pump is so that we can get enough distance from the parking to the pump area, so not to crowd the parking.
Oh, I see.
So we've kind of, trying to allow better access to the parking areas, but again, getting into the 12-foot requirement for the pump.
It's going to be a really tight site, any way you look at it. The configuration there with cars backing toward those pumps is a little scary, frankly. But I think, in all fairness, we kind of did this to this guy when we took the right of way. I mean, I don't see that there's much that can be done with the site without some variation to the setbacks. Thoughts from others?
I agree with you. It fits within the statutory guidelines and the criteria, and it's very peculiar, and the 17-foot right-of-way completely caused the problem, and I think he's provided the solutions that he can do for this piece of property, and I would support the variance.
Is that a motion?
It's a motion to approve 14205.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the application. Register your vote. You're approved. Good luck.
Item number 7, case number 14206, request of Starlight Sign for a variance to permit 4 signs on the city right-of-way in the I-2 Moderate Industrial District located at 5201 South Meridian Avenue.
Welcome. Please give us your name and address for the record and speak to your application.
My name is David Scott, address 7923 East McKinney, Denton, Texas. We're here seeking a variance for the Will Rogers Airport Conrack facility in the right-of-way setback for directional signs. These are informational signs to direct motorists where to return their rental car. The signs meet all DOT specifications in design. We're asking for just a minimal setback to the 75-foot from the street. Doesn't pose any kind of visibility hazard. Just
It talks about continuity for signs in this corridor.
Yes.
And there's reference in our report about taking exception on the colors and some minor artistic changes. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, so the only variation to a standard Department of Transportation sign that these have are the background color and a little artistic feature to the top, which is unique to the Will Rogers Airport facility only. So they don't blend with all other traffic signs, and you do know that you're seeing a rental car facility return sign. We're just trying to direct motorists to turn at the new facility.
This will be the one and only time you ever hear me ask this question, but are you sure you only need 4?
Yes, there are
Rental car places are notoriously difficult.
There are additional signs out there in place already that did not require the variance as they met setback. We also, so we had some signs that didn't require permits because they were inside the property. We had some signs that required revocable permits, which were applied for and received. It was just these remaining 4 signs that we could not meet the setback and keep them visible to the street.
I want to recognize the director and ask him to give us his name and address for
Thank
the
you,
record.
Mark Cranenberg, Airports Director for the City of Oklahoma City, and as such, I also serve as the General Manager for the Oklahoma City Airport Trust. Just to give you an overview of what our intent at the airport is we're underway with a comprehensive signage project overall at the airport. We're changing all of the roadway signage in and out of the airport. These sign concepts were approved by the Airport Trust a few months ago. These concepts will be carried over as the new signage inside the airport terminal, the expansion of the terminal, which we're designing now. It'll carry over to the front of the terminal in the upper and lower level, as well as the new rental car center that opened up on March 3rd. These same concepts are in that facility as well. We're also going to be carrying these concepts throughout our parking garages. So, in other words, it's a complete overhaul of all of the signage at the airport to update the, I would say, the 1960s and 70s vintage signs that we have today. One thing about this rental car facility, the location was chosen because of it's very intuitive for rental car returns, as most people are coming from downtown off of Airport Road and you drop right into the facility. And so from that standpoint, it's a great advantage. Since we have concept signage already in the facility, it makes sense to have this kind of signage on the right-of-way, leading these people into the facility. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. He always keeps this in line.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the application. Register your vote. You are approved. Good luck.
Item number 8, case number 14207, request of Larry Dyball for a variance to the 50-foot setback of a non-accessory sign from a residential district in the C3 Community Commercial District located at 11504 West Reno Avenue.
Yes, sir. Give us your name and address for the record.
I'm Larry Dyball. My address is 10621 Northwest 33rd Place. It's Oklahoma City, but the Yukon mailing address, 73099.
Go ahead and tell us about your application.
My application is that I purchased a small strip of land that was zone C3 and didn't really know the proportions of it until I surveyed it and applied for a permit to place a small non-accessory sign there. The staff reminded me that there's a 50-foot set aside. In this particular case, immediately to the west is an R1 zone property that's part of the floodplain, if you look at the map there. So it'll never be developed. Then the next property is R1 as well. So I'm asking for a 10-foot variance so I can be further west within that 50-foot set aside, but I do have another 50-foot beyond that. So effectively, it's 90-foot from a occupied R1 property, and with no chance of it ever being a house built in that site. You can see there, it's a flood zone. Where I propose to put the sign is not in the flood zone, not overhanging the flood zone, strictly on C3 property.
Anybody here from the public to be heard on this matter? Board members?
Yeah, there's no way I can support this. After going out and looking at the site, I mean, not only is it completely open to the residential property to the west, but it's way off the corner. I mean, there's no reason to put this kind of a sign here for any reason whatsoever that I can see. So,
Am I understanding the application correct, JJ, that if, I want to get my verbiage right, if there was a 50-foot setback from, and this drainage canal were a part of the C3, then he would be able to put this sign there without coming here, is that correct?
Yes. If the floodway, if the drainage canal were not zoned R1.
Out of curiosity, why is the drainage canal zoned R1?
Because they can really be anywhere.
Well, what I was wondering is that something that's left over? Was it sort of trimmed fat, for lack of a better way to put it, from this residential development to the west that
Yes.
just sort of got kicked out? Is that fair?
Yes.
I think the site that I believe it's a daycare sits on was probably rezoned from R1 to what it is now.
I just want to make sure everybody's got the letter from Mr. Hickman regarding representing his protest of your request.
Basically, the way it's situated, it would be in your memo, you indicated it would be 90 feet instead of 50 feet because of the conditions.
It would be 90 feet from the residential property line, but yes, less than 50 feet from the closest R1, which is the drainage ditch.
This area is residential to the north, to the west. It's true that there is commercial development to the east toward the intersection, but there really is just no reason to have anything like this at this location.
I understand why you're saying that. I don't mean to speak for the applicant, but all those residences being in close proximity are probably precisely why he wants to put it there. I mean, there's certainly a business rationale, or he wouldn't be here. I think I'm bothered by this only because if it weren't for a non-residential element being a residentially zoned piece of land, this would be simply a permit issue, and instead, it's not. We get these letters from Lamar every time there's one of these before us. We see them. And my point is that there's no one here from the neighborhood, from the people who are going to be looking at this sign to protest this application. I'm assuming that's not why she's here. I don't know. But no one signed up to speak for this. No one seems to have an issue with it. And I realize that we don't necessarily, from a policy standpoint, we have not favored allowing these signs in residential uses. I don't know that I've ever seen a variance be granted for one. But what's unique about this is precisely that element right there won't allow this to happen. And if it were leftover trimmed fat, again, if you will, from the C3, he wouldn't even be here. He'd just be building a sign. And it's hard for me to deny someone the right when the four elements of a variance appear to be present, but for a non-residential use.
What hardship are we talking about here? I mean, I'm not getting that. I don't,
Would you like to address your hardship?
Well, the hardship, of course, I purchased the property, but there are many businesses, I've already got people saying they want a sign if I get it there. There's many businesses up and down Mustang Road there in Reno, so there's no signage in the area. It'll
there's
give them,
signage in the area, so we would be introducing signage to this area.
yeah.
And you understand that financial hardship is not a hardship?
I understand, yeah. Yeah.
How big is your property?
It is 45 foot wide, 200 foot long. And of course, like I said, until I had it surveyed, just going by what's online on the map, it was difficult to tell where the boundaries were even.
I think this is a terrible idea. There's a business there that has signage that serves it. The introduction of a non-accessory sign at this location served no purpose whatsoever except commercial advantage. He bought the property knowing what it was. I don't hear anything at all about the protest letter except to say that it does indicate that he is an experienced billboard operator that's familiar with the sign ordinance. So it's not like, a mom and pop situation where somebody came down here and made, a horrible mistake and invested their life savings. It's just like a terrible idea to introduce signage along this corridor where there is none this far off of that corner.
Is that a motion?
I would second it.
We have a motion and a second to deny the application. Register your vote. Your application is denied, sir.
Excuse me?
You're denied. Your application for your variance is denied.
Okay, thank you.
John, let's go back and call case number 1.
Item number 1, case number 14191, request of Thomas Hernandez for a variance to permit a residence encroaching the side building setbacks in the R1 Single Family Residential District located at 1006 South Barnes Avenue.
Ma'am, is this the case you're present for? Okay.
I noticed that this was continued.
It's been continued once because he wasn't here. We've got quite a significant language barrier here with our applicant. I don't think there'd be any problem with you going ahead and moving forward with this. It's an improvement to the property, and it's be less of an encroachment than what currently exists.
Yeah, I don't necessarily have any problem at all. Will we be able to notify him that it's been approved?
We will do our best.
I'll move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Register your vote. The application is approved. If there be no other business, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second to adjourn. Second. Register your vote. We are adjourned.